Tag TV, and Tag Radio. Technology now has a voice of innovation and information. Get it on www.tagtvonline.com. Public education free from many of the rules, regulations, and statutes that apply to other traditional public schools in exchange for accountability for producing certain results, all set forth in each school's charter. Charter schools, a hot topic both in academic and political arenas of debate in the search for excellence of our children's education, albeit our global economic competitiveness. Consider science, technology, engineering, and math, and the challenge for educators to prepare students for jobs that didn't even exist using technologies that haven't been invented. That the top 10 jobs in demand in 2010 didn't exist in 2004. That a student starting a 4-year tech degree today, that half of what they would learn in the first 2 years could potentially be outdated by their 3rd year of study. Enter Tech High, right here in Atlanta, a Title I distinguished school that is chartered to focus on math, science, and technology, and continues to be ranked among the best high schools in Atlanta, an alternative learning environment where students work in small classroom settings and receive enhanced tutorial education. Greetings, everyone. It's Tuesday, February 10th, 2009, and this is Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. The Tech Talk Special Legislative Series 09 continues as Tino Tech Talks with Kelly McCutchen, Executive Vice President of the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, an independent think tank that proposes practical, market-oriented approaches to public policy to improve the lives of Georgia. Kelly has been instrumental in helping to create the Civic Renewal Project that highlights the work of outstanding community-based organizations, the No Excuse program to recognize and study high-achieving, high-poverty public schools, and the award-winning statewide report cards on education, crime, and taxes. He has also served on the boards of Georgia Tech Alumni Association and Leadership Georgia, and is the current chair for the governing board of Tech High, the math, science, and technology-focused public charter school right here in Atlanta. Kelly is a highly respected and recognized writer and commentator on education, tax, environmental, and economic policy, and has been published in the Wall Street Journal, Georgia Trend, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and has appeared on Georgia Week in Review and on numerous television and radio programs. The challenge and the potential of charter schools and educational excellence in science, technology, and engineering and math for Georgia's children and for our state's knowledge-based industry's future global competitiveness, as Tino Tech Talks with visionary educator and community leader Kelly McCutchen.
Kelly, thanks for joining me on Tech Talk.
Great to be here, Tino.
The Tech High has had just an amazing rise from several years ago when it started to being really an accomplished school. But before we get into that, I think it's for our listeners to know, it's important for our listeners to understand what really is special about a charter school and a career academy. So can you tell us a little bit about how
Sure.
they work and how they operate?
There's a lot of confusion, and it's understandable. Charter is a unique concept. Maybe the best way to think about it is a contract school. These are public schools. And as you said in the intro, it is you're trading off flexibility for accountability. Charter schools are exempt from most rules and regulations except for health, safety, and civil rights. But in exchange for that, you have to meet your performance objectives, typically academic achievement criteria, whether it's a graduation rate or certain test scores. And if you don't meet that, then the charter's taken away. It's a great opportunity to create innovation in and within the public school system. You hear a lot of talk now about vouchers. That would allow kids to go to private schools. This is all about public schools. And many times it's confused with a magnet school. A magnet school is a traditional public school that just has a particular focus. And many times they're allowed, whether it's performing arts or math and science, they can require students to have certain admission requirements. You have to have a certain ability or test at a certain level. Charter schools are not allowed to do that. So they truly are public. They have to accept all comers, and they can't charge any kind of tuition. It all has to be free. Now, Career Academy is a particular type of charter school, typically at the high school level. And what that allows is students to be dually enrolled in a technical college, so they can be taking high school courses and technical college courses at the same time. And it's not unheard of for kids to graduate from high school on Friday night and then on Saturday literally graduate from a technical college with a 2-year degree, all at the same time, at the same age as when a lot of people are just graduating from high school. And that's something they can go on right into the career workforce, or they can use that skill to pay their way through college and further education.
Now, it seems like charter schools have gotten some fairly good results, not just in Georgia here, but across the nation. Is that actually a correct statement?
Absolutely. In Georgia specifically, not only do charter schools enroll a higher percentage of minorities and a higher percentage of low-income students than the traditional public schools, but their performance has been better, whether it's looking at high school graduation rates. The graduation rates for career academies is over 90%.
Wow.
You compare that to around 60s or 70s for the traditional schools, and the test scores are also better across the board. So they have been a great success story, and they're really starting to spread across the state. It first started off a little bit controversial, and the laws governing charters and the fairness in which they are funded has dramatically improved over the past few years, and so I think you'll be seeing more and more charter schools as we go forward.
Well, TAG is particularly happy with and proud to be play a little role actually in the history of Tech High. But why don't you talk a bit about how it got started?
Well, it is a great example of people coming together to solve a problem. And as you know, the business community has been frustrated with public education for a long time, and they've thrown a lot of money at the situation, and they've complained a lot. But finally, that several years ago, in early, say, 2002, the TAG Foundation decided to do something about it and to get involved, and they sort of rolled up their sleeves and said, we're going to start a math and science-focused schools. We're tired of wanting to hire kids in our own neighborhoods, in our own city, but we just can't find qualified employees. So we're going to get involved in this and sort of put our money and our time where our mouth is. At the same time, we had a meeting, the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, and me and my colleagues with the new superintendent of Atlanta Public Schools, Beverly Hall. And at the end of the meeting, I live in the city of Atlanta, and I told her I'm a graduate of Georgia Tech, and it's frustrating that we've been working providing technical assistance to many charter schools and traditional schools that are focusing on math and science, and Georgia Tech's been a real active participant. Why can't we do that here in Atlanta? And she said, well, I'm glad you said that. I just talked to Dr. Clough, the president of Georgia Tech, about that issue last week, and we'd love to see that happen. So why don't you come up with a plan of what it would look like? So we went back to the drawing board and drew up sort of what a math and science-focused high school would look like, presented it to Dr. Hall a few weeks later. She said, this looks great. Why don't you do it? And we explained to her, well, no, we're a think tank. We don't actually do things. We come up with ideas and let other people do them. And she said, no, it sounds like you know what you're doing. So we went back and thought about it and said, we have constantly said as a policy, we think all kids can learn. And we think the public schools ought to be able to do it for less money than they're spending now. What better way to prove that we're right, not in theory, but actually to do it, and do it in an inner city situation that is really, really tough that no one really has figured out to this point. So we created the Tech High Foundation. We grabbed an old board member of ours, Don Chapman, who's a serial entrepreneur and a real hero in the Georgia high-tech community. And his wife is a teacher and a great heart for public education, and he agreed to be the chairman. And we realized this was a challenge because in order to find a CEO to run the school, you had to have somebody that understands running a business because it's a multi-million-dollar business. The central office doesn't help you. You have to do it all yourself. You have to have someone who's an educator that understands education. And it's a political exercise. You have to get approved through not only the Atlanta School Board, but the Georgia School Board. And so Barbara Christmas was the person that came to mind immediately. She had had been a very successful educator, had run a very large teacher association, and certainly understood politics in Georgia. And so we were able to get her on board. At the same time, we learned of the TAG Foundation's efforts, and they had actually gotten a charter partially approved. So we met. We had almost exactly the same ideas, so we merged our efforts, and that's how it all got started. In 2003, the combined charter was approved, and in 2004, we opened our doors to our very first class. So that's sort of how it all got started.
Well, that's great. And just for our listeners, the TAG Foundation is a separate entity from TAG. The TAG Foundation is a 501c3 charitable organization, where TAG is a 501c6. TAG, in its wisdom early on, well before my time, decided that it would be important to have a foundation that would focus on getting youth excited about math, science, technology, and engineering. And this was really their big focus in those early years. And then it went a little bit sleepy in the over the last 4 or 5 years, but we've rekindled it now and created a new name called TAG Education Collaborative, and we've hired our first executive director. So we're looking forward to work with you, Kelly, and others to see if we can make some more things happen in the community. This school has really gotten some significant results over the past few years. I was privileged to see the video that came out maybe a year or so ago on their first graduating class and the results. Talk a little bit about the school, the students, and the results, please.
Well, let me first tell you what the students looked like when they first came in the door that first year. About 75% were eligible for free or reduced lunch, which is a higher percentage of low-income students than the Atlanta public school system overall. We had about 93% minorities, which was also a higher percentage of minority students than the Atlanta public school system. Unfortunately, we gave them some pre-tests in order to know how we should place them and figure out what teachers we needed to hire during our 3-week math camp at Georgia Tech. And we found out, it's a little shocking, that 90% of these students were below grade level in math. And about 75% of them were below grade level in reading, with about 40% of them about 4 grade levels behind. These are 9th grade students, so many of them are reading on the 4th or 5th grade level. So it would have been setting them up for failure to have started them off in 9th grade literature and algebra and geometry. So we had to really switch gears and put together a fast ramp-up program to get them up to speed. And we told a lot of their parents it may take them 5 years. You know, people are used to that in college. People take 5 years to graduate. Not in high school, because they really had a lot of ground to catch up. But we're very pleased, 4 years later, all but one of these kids graduated. 80% of them were accepted and are attending today a 4-year college. The rest are either in a 2-year college, or we have one in the Army and one went to firefighting school.
That's amazing.
The test scores, they were at or above the state average on every end-of-course test that the state mandates. They outscored every Georgia school system in the high school writing test. Now remember, where these kids were in their reading skills when they first started, they outscored every system average in the whole state of Georgia in their writing test score. And their SAT score of 1397 was the second highest in the Atlanta public schools. They won over $800,000 in scholarships. That's not including the Hope scholarships. We had 3 students going to Georgia Tech, and I remember when I was at Georgia Tech right before the Olympics, and we were terrified that they were going to realize that how few students from the Atlanta public schools actually ever went to Georgia Tech. And when we started, only 1 student in APS was accepted to Georgia Tech. We've got 3 there now, and I think one of our students made a 4.0 their first semester. So
fantastic.
That's pretty amazing. And we got one of our students that was in that remedial reading class got a full scholarship to Emory University. So the results have been wonderful, and it hasn't been easy. You know, these kids, they had mandatory school on Saturdays that they were behind. They had mandatory after-school tutorials. I mean, it was a lot of hard work. but they really flourished in this environment, and we're just thrilled to see them succeeding at the next level.
So the results that you've achieved that actually should gain, and I know it's garnered some national attention, it's just significant to reinforce the leadership that was around this school, but also charter schools in principle and what they can do to impact the society. But it isn't easy for you still at Tech High in respect to keeping it going and keeping it growing. What are some of the greatest challenges that you face?
Well, our biggest challenge has been facilities. If many of your listeners may know that the first location was at SciTrek, which was the Math and Science Museum, Children's Museum here in Atlanta, at the right next door to the Civic Center. Very centrally located, near Georgia Tech, near a MARTA rail station. It was perfect for our school. Don Chapman was one of the original founders of SciTrek. So it was a great opportunity for our kids, and we moved in. It was a great environment because when you walked in the door, it clearly was not your traditional high school. It felt different. It was a professional environment. We had offices for our teachers. I mean, it was carpeted, had office furniture. It was a great atmosphere. Well, unfortunately, as you may know, SciTrek went bankrupt that year.
Right.
And we had the lease for 5 years under SciTrek, so that was null and void. We tried to stay, but the city had other plans for that facility. So we struggled to find a building that would hold us, and we only had about 2 months to do it. And we were able to find a building down on Memorial Drive, just past the cemetery there, an Oakland cemetery. And it was an old, abandoned elementary school. Had not been used in 2 or 3 years. We went in, renovated it, and we've been there ever since. Right now, we're limited to about 250 students. And so we are actively looking for other opportunities, either to expand there or to look to some other facility. It's economies of scale. So if we can get up to 350, 400 students, we'll be doing very well. But it's a real challenge now. It's very expensive being in this old building. It's a challenge recruiting students to a building that's in a bad state of repair. And so that really has been the biggest challenge. Things we thought were going to be challenges really weren't. This one was one we thought we had worked out, and didn't work. So we hope to solve that situation in the next few months. We've got several options that we're working with Atlanta Public Schools. They have some vacant buildings that might work for us, so we hope to solve that in the near future.
Well, as our listeners digest this, I think there will be a lot of excitement around ways that they can help. Can you give us some tips if TAG members want to get involved and how they might do that?
Well, first of all, let me say, TAG members are already involved. They're on the Tech High Foundation board. They're helping us raise money, so you're already doing a lot. But There are other things. We have lots of volunteer opportunities. What we try to do is expose our students to a lot of different career options. So we're always looking for speakers where you can come to the school and tell the students a little bit about what your industry does, and tell them about, what happens in a normal day. Provide a job shadowing experience. Earthlink and Check Free have done that for us, and it's great to send the kids out for a whole day, and they actually really learn what you really do in a company like these, and what it takes, what kind of education you're going to need to be considered for a job in one of those companies. That's really helpful for them, and then they decide, maybe information technology is a path that they're interested in. We then try to set them up with internships as they start taking these college technical classes. We try to set them up with internships. So if you have an internship available for our students, that would be very helpful as well. So there any number of things. Anyone can please call me, and I'd be happy to answer them. I'm at 404-256-4050, and we're always looking for volunteers and help.
Well, that's great, and TAG and Tech Education Collaborative are working to develop an internship program. We hope to take at least 25 students that are rising seniors, so they're going in their senior year, that have a passion towards technology, and place them in some of our companies for the summer, and we're building up a little fund so we can support that as well. And Tech High is at the top of our list, so we'll definitely be able to take a few students from there. Well, Kelly, we're out of time, but I really appreciate what you're doing for the technology community, for the youth students in Atlanta area, and thank you for joining me on Tech Talk.
Thank you, Tino, and Tech High really appreciates the continuing support of TAG as well.